Hey guys, Telegram Sam here. If you already know, I have an Instagram, Telegram _Sam _movies. So if you're on Instagram, check me out there. But in today's video, we're just going to be talking about a VHS slash DVD haul. That's my cat being a nuisance. I got 2 DVDs and 6 VHSs to show you guys. The DVDs I got at a thrift store, and the VHSs I got at an antique store. I don't think I paid like more than $10 for any of these. But yeah, I watched all of them, so let's talk about them. First off, we have The Departed. Came out 2006, directed by Martin Scorsese, and this is sort of an epic crime, drama, thriller. I have seen this movie before. It was a really long time ago, probably when I was like a teenager. I think Netflix had it on their streaming service for a little bit, and that's where I first originally saw it. So I forgot most of it. But yeah, this is an amazing movie. I mean, I remember when I posted on Instagram that I was watching this, someone was like, oh, it's like Goodfellas, but like with cell phones. But to me, the Irish mob in this movie makes the Italian mob in Goodfellas look like preschoolers. Like, I feel like this movie is so much more brutal. It takes so many twists and turns. I feel like at least the Italian mob at least have some ethics, while Frank Costello, aka Jack Nicholson, who plays like the head mob guy, has zero ethics. He will kill anyone and their wife and their children just for looking at him wrong or treating anyone in his sort of posse wrong. And yeah, there's like a scene in the movie where he just comes out of this like kitchen, and he's like covered in blood. Obviously he was in the middle of like chopping someone up, and he just starts a conversation with the guys that are out front, and just is talking like, oh yeah, this is just like a normal day in Boston, a normal Tuesday. But yeah, essentially, Mark Wahlberg plays this underling in Jack Nicholson's mob that ends up becoming a high-ranking sort of cop in like the mob division of like the Boston police. And Leonardo DiCaprio plays an actual police guy who's infiltrating and going undercover in Frank Costello's mob organization. So it's kind of like the rats trying to figure out who the rat is on each side. And spoiler alert, this ending is so insane. Like, okay, so if you don't want this movie to be spoiled for you, just like scroll through the video until you see me not holding this up anymore. But okay, so the ending where Mark Wahlberg shoots Matt Damon. Okay, when I originally saw it, I was like, okay, this is him getting retaliation for killing the the policeman, Leonardo DiCaprio, the captain played by Martin Sheen, so forth and so on. But then I was like, wait, the movie ends with like a rat scurrying across Matt Damon's balcony. I was like, did Mark Wahlberg's character work for Frank Costello? And like there was like a thing like, if anything happens to me, kill Matt Damon. But it's like even like Frank Costello was a rat. He was working for the FBI. Like everyone in that movie was a rat. So it's like it could have gone either ways. But I don't know. Let me know your opinion. But yeah, a great movie. This would probably be, definitely like, I wouldn't say like top 5 Martin Scorsese movies, but definitely like in the top 10 of his movies that he's directed. Next up, we have Annie Hall. Came out in 1977, directed by Woody Allen. This is sort of like a satirical rom-com drama. Again, this was one I saw a really long time ago. Again, probably like when I was in my early teens. I think I maybe saw it on like AMC or TCM. But yeah, this movie is still so funny. Like that scene where they're at their friend's house and they're doing cocaine, and he like sneezes in the cocaine and it gets everywhere. And I always forget Paul Simon is in this movie. Christopher Walken plays Annie's brother. I love that scene where he like confesses to Woody Allen's character that he has dreams of like crashing his car, like going really fast and purposely crashing his car, and then he ends up driving them to the airport, and you just see Woody Allen in the back with his eyes wide open, like waiting for Christopher Walken to like crash the car. It's really funny. Obviously, it's hard to have a conversation without Woody Allen nowadays without talking about his controversial personal life. Do I personally like the man? No. But to then punish everyone else that was involved with his movies, and that, like, I think Diane Keaton won a Best Supporting Actress Oscar for this movie, or Best Actress Oscar for this movie, and she definitely deserves it. I mean, she does play an early version of a manic pixie dream girl, but she does it really well. But yeah, this is just a funny, I mean, it's a classic comedy. Up there is one of the best comedies ever. And some of the jokes don't really age well, especially the ones where he's talking about like underage girls. It's kind of awkward considering what we kind of know about Woody Allen now. But yeah, it's still a funny, good movie, and Jeff Goldblum's in it for all of 2 seconds. I think it was like one of his first early acting performances, but it's a great movie. Alright, next up, VHS's. A classic teen rom-com drama, I would say. Say Anything. This came out in 1989, directed by Cameron Crowe. I actually first saw this not that long ago, probably a couple months ago. I think I saw it on one of the streaming services, maybe Tubi. But this is one I've been meaning to watch for a really long time, and I was not disappointed by it. I always hear how it's like one of the greatest of the sort of teen movies to come out of the 80s. I love how it's set in Seattle because I'm originally from Washington and my family is from Seattle, so it's so cool to see like certain spots I know. I think I know exactly where that 7-Eleven is, where he warns her about like not walking over the glass. But this is such a fun, it's like also a fun and also like heartbreaking movie where like it's teenagers going through like real things. And like when you find out like I think Diane, that's her name, yeah, Diane, her dad actually did steal money from the old folks from his old folks home, because like through the movie you're like there's no way he did, like obviously there's something up, like you're like Diane, you just can't believe that this really nice sort of overly protective father would do something like that. But then when you find out he actually did, you're like, man, I was duped too. It just breaks your heart for Diane because, you know, that's obviously the only person she really has. And the fact that she sacrificed her love with John Cusack's character for her dad, and then for him to like come around and like backstab her like that, it's really messed up. And then the end scene when they're on the airplane and they're on their way to London, and Diane has like a really intense fear of flying, and John Cusack's character is trying to like talk her down. He's like, okay, when the seatbelt light goes off, that's when we know we're okay, because we're most likely to crash at the beginning of the flight or the end of the flight. So as soon as the seatbelt light comes on, that's how you know you're okay. And you're waiting for the seatbelt light to come on. You're waiting for the seatbelt light to come on. There's a second I was like, are they really gonna end this movie by the airplane crashing? But then the seatbelt light goes on, and then that's when the movie ends, and it cuts to the end screen. But there was like a second there I was like, are they really about to crash this fucking airplane right now? But yeah, a great movie. Was really happy to find it on VHS. Love it. Alright, next up we have an old classic sci-fi horror movie. This is The Invisible Man. This originally came out in 1933, directed by James Whale. As I said, classic sci-fi horror. But yeah, I have never seen this before. This was a first time watch for me. I believe I've seen like parts of it, but it's so crazy to think that this was made in 1933, because the special effects in this are just so ahead of its time. You really can't see. I really still don't know how they did it, considering with the limited sort of special effects they could do during this time. And Claude Rains does an amazing performance, and there are certain things that they bring up. I mean, I'm not sure. This is obviously based off of the H.G. Wells story, The Invisible Man, but I'm not sure how much they actually took from that story versus what's in the movie. But I remember when Claude Rains is sort of explaining to his friend that he goes to when he's sort of on the run, like all the things that are hard for him to do because he's invisible. And like one of the things is like, oh yeah, it's hard for me to walk downstairs because I can't see my feet. And then you're like, oh yeah, like the only way we can't fall downstairs is because when we're going downstairs, we're looking at our feet to make sure our feet are on the step before we like go down. It's so like crazy, the little things you really don't think about until he like brings them up in this movie. I would say I think this is a fantastic movie, and also has Gloria Stewart. Her kind of plays like the love interest to Claude Rains, but she famously played the old woman in Titanic. I don't think I've ever seen an original old movie she's been in, but that was cool to see her actually act, and she was so beautiful. But yeah, such a great movie, so well written. I would say the only thing that really bugged me was the fucking tavern hotel woman. Like when she discovers like Claude Rains is this invisible man, he starts like fucking with everyone in this small town, and she just is shrieking and screaming, and she's just so annoying. I was like, just shut up. And plus, like when they're talking it, their English accent is so thick, it's hard to understand what they're saying. Like even worse than Ozzy Osbourne. Like I really couldn't understand most of what they were saying. But besides that, I really love this movie, and I'm really happy I watched it and glad I have this really cool VHS copy of it. Next up, a movie I've seen so many times. Definitely up there is one of my favorite movies by one of my favorite directors. This is Fargo. This came out in 1996, directed by Joel Coen. Black comedy, crime, drama. I mean, probably my favorite Coen Brothers movie after Big Lebowski. I mean, I've seen this so many times. I remember Netflix originally had it, and that's where I originally saw it. And I mean, the first time I saw it, I immediately like rewatched it because there's so many subtle, nuanced things within this movie. I never get tired of watching it, and I'm really glad to finally have a physical copy of it so I can watch it whenever I want to. Next up, we have something I kind of took a chance on. I've been kind of going through a bit of a Clint Eastwood phase recently, and I saw this and I've never heard of it, and it just looked really cool and totally up my alley since I love like 70s cop drama, gritty movies. But this is The Gauntlet. Originally came out in 1977. This was directed by Clint Eastwood. Action thriller. Yeah, there's not a lot to say about this movie. I mean, it is what you think it is. It's like a cop shoot 'em up. Clint Eastwood plays this sort of alcoholic sort of cop that's kind of like over his job, but he still kind of does it because he needs a paycheck. That he works in Phoenix, but he has to go to Las Vegas to get this woman who is a sex worker who saw or was a witness to a murder. It's never really explained what she saw. It's just like the mob's after her for some reason because she may or may not have witnessed a murder and might be a witness to it. It's never fully explained why the mob is after her. And so he has to go to this jail that she's at in Las Vegas and transport her back to Phoenix where the trial will be held. And essentially they end up going on the run together because you end up finding out that the cops are involved in it, and like they're also trying to have Clint Eastwood killed too. Like this movie's kind of confusing because it's never fully explained like why the mob and the cops are working together or why they want Clint Eastwood killed. It's kind of more about just seeing Clint Eastwood involved in all these cool chase scenes and all these cool action scenes, and seeing him beat up Hell's Angels and just various other people. The writing is kind of so-so. There's a scene early on in the movie of like when the mob is first originally trying to get after Clint Eastwood, and the woman that's in this movie, Sandra Locke, who I think was in a relationship with Clint Eastwood when they were making this. But she's a sex worker in Las Vegas in the 70s, and Clint Eastwood pulls out a gun and she's like, "What's that?" It's like, really? Like she's never seen a gun before. And then he's like, "Oh, well, take it." She's like, "What do you want me to do with this?" It's like, You know what he wants you to do. And then like the mob starts shooting them through the back of this ambulance that they're trying to transport her in. And she's like, why are they shooting at us? It's like, you know why they're shooting at you. It's kind of like just like very stupid writing. And yeah, I don't know. But there is a really cool scene at the end where they make it to Phoenix and they have to find a way to get to the courthouse without the cops trying to kill them, the cops slash the mob trying to kill them. And they essentially, I think it says like 8,000 bullets were shot in the scene where they where they hijack this Greyhound bus and they armor it out and end up driving through downtown Phoenix to get to the courthouse. And they should not be alive. Like, that was one thing at the end I was like, even if they did sort of armor out this bus very fast after hijacking it, wouldn't you think 5 minutes before they're supposedly driving through, they would not be alive. There would be some little thing that they would have missed, that a bullet would have went through and shot them. And the fact that the cops never shot out the tires, like, it's just like so kind of nonsensical. But again, it's kind of just like a movie that kind of just has Clint Eastwood just doing all these action chases and sequences, and it's a so-so action 70s movie. Next up, I showed this in my last video. As you know, this is one of my all-time favorite movies. This is The Fugitive Kind. Came out in 1960, directed by Sidney Lumet. This is a drama, romance movie. I think Marlon Brando does some of his best acting in this movie. And the woman, Anne Magnani, I mean, she does one of the greatest performances I have ever seen. You just see the torture and the torment and just her wanting to just have her American dream and just be with this man that she loves, but she has to deal with her old husband that's dying. But as you end up finding out, does all this horrible stuff to her, and Marlon Brando is trying to be her savior, and they end up falling in love, and like it's a very heartbreaking movie, but it's also one of the sexiest movies you'll ever see. I mean, Marlon Brando was one of the most seductive people to, I think, ever live. Just like the way he positions himself and the way he looks at you and the way he says things, and just, he could seduce the Pope. I mean, he could seduce anyone. And like, kind of like the whole running joke through this movie is how he is playing the sort of Marlon Brando character, and how like Joanne Woodward also has an amazing performance in this movie, but she's sort of playing this woman who wants Marlon Brando's character in this movie, but he's sort of disgusted by her, by her eagerness to have him, and the fact that he's actually more intrigued by the woman he knows he can't have, played by Anne Magnani. And it's a really interesting dynamic, and it's based off of the Tennessee Williams play Orpheus Descending. I mean, I think it's one of the best things Marlon Brando has ever been in, the best adaptation of a Tennessee Williams play, one of Sidney Lumet's best movies. I just love this movie, and the writing is so beautiful. It'll just break your heart and yet make you all hot and bothered at the same time. All right, last but not least, this is actually the first time I've fully seen this movie. I've seen clips from this movie, but yeah, such a great movie. This is El Mariachi by Robert Rodriguez. This was his directorial debut. Came out in 1992. This is sort of a neo-Western crime. But yeah, if you're familiar with Desperado and Once Upon a Time in Mexico, aka Robert Rodriguez's Mexican trilogy, this was the first in the trilogy. And I would say out of the three, this is probably my second favorite. I don't know, just I love Desperado, even though it's sort of a roided out Hollywood version of this movie. I just love it, sort of like the 90s cheeseballiness of it. And plus, you can definitely tell like the influence Quentin Tarantino had on that movie, so that might also be why I kind of prefer Desperado a bit more. And plus, Desperado has an amazing soundtrack. While this, you can tell it was very low budget. I think I read somewhere that he shot this for less than $10,000. I think $7,000 in total is what he spent on this. But it's very well made. you really can't tell that's a low budget movie. The story is fantastic. I mean, Desperado kind of ruined the ending for me because like the beginning state of Desperado kind of shows you what happens at the end with the love interest. But the writing in this is beautiful. I love the introduction of the mariachi where he's talking about, you know, the loneliness of the road. You know, I have no luck, have no love. Sort of dialogue in the beginning of that scene, and the ending where he kind of just takes this turn of like, okay, now I'm going to become this killer that's sort of on this road of rampage to sort of right the wrongs that just happened to the woman I love and that just happened to me. But yeah, such a great movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And if you haven't seen Desperado, check that out. You can skip Once Upon a Time in Mexico. I did not like that movie. I was very disappointed by that movie. Yeah, let me know your thoughts and feelings, what your favorite of the trilogy, Mexican trilogy is. But yeah, those were all the movies I have bought and watched recently. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.